Welcome into the Sporting News Studios for Ram Fantasy Update. I'm Tom Vandervoort with the experts from Sporting News Fantasy Source. This time we got Brad Pinkerton sitting in the hot seat, so you got to tell us all the information we need to know to excel in Week 2 here, Brad.
Well, let's do it.
All right, now we have some information from Week 1 in the NFL. What's a matchup, having looked at that you think fantasy players could exploit here in Week 2?
Well, that's a good point. We can look back at Week 1 because we have a little bit of information to work on. Normally, the fantasy owners would try to avoid any matchups with the Jets, but I don't know if that's the case this week. Last week, we saw the Bills come in and run all over New York's vaunted run defense, and that's because they were missing starting nose tackle, 325-pound run stuffer.
Right.
If he's not in the lineup again this week, things could really open up for Jonathan Dwyer, potentially the Steelers' running back. So whereas you might just completely ignore Dwyer when you're looking to set your lineups, he could actually be a sneaky flex play.
Now, he got 9 carries last week, but your sense is he's going to get more. He did outperform Redmond last week, and Mendenhall is still questionable.
Yeah, Redmond got the start last week and was awful, just downright awful. Dwyer looked much better. I'm expecting him to get the start and for the Steelers to ride the hot hand, so he could be the one taking advantage of this potential good matchup.
Now, on the outside, you'd normally say, well, we're not going to throw against the Jets. They've got 2 great corners, but you're telling me maybe there could be something there for fantasy owners.
There's a third receiver in the mix for the Steelers, and when you've got Darrelle Revis locking down Antonio Brown or Mike Wallace, whoever he's covering, with Antonio Cromartie covering the other, Emmanuel Sanders now is free to roam around and exploit his good matchups, and especially the way the Steelers are looking for short, quick passes. That's right up Manny Sanders' alley. He actually tied for the team lead in targets last week.
So Manny Sanders could get Manny yards? Is that what you're
I like it.
All right, now let's talk about matchups to maybe avoid. Something that might be tempting. You look back at Week 1, you go, ooh, I'm going to start this guy. Maybe what's fool's gold for fantasy players
so
this week?
Kevin Smith coming off a great Week 1 performance. Well, Week 2 he gets a much tougher test. He's going up against the 49ers. The #1 run defense from last year. That's already a bad matchup. They shut down the Packers' run game in Week 1. I just don't see a whole lot of room to run there for Kevin Smith. And the 49ers can put some points on the board, so this could be a slugfest back-and-forth passing matchup. I don't know how much the Lions are going to try to even run or how long they can even have that option. So, and really, you look back at this matchup from last year, this is when the 49ers put Javid Best out of commission. He hasn't played since this game.
Right.
I'm not predicting an injury for Kevin Smith this time around, but I am predicting a bad game.
So what you're saying is Smith could start trying to run the ball, but those carries could dry up very quickly.
Yeah, and I'm not seeing much even with the carries he does get.
All right, now let's talk about any other information from injuries or anything else you saw in Week 1 we need to remember here for Week 2.
Well, there's 2 cornerback situations that fantasy owners should be paying attention to. #1, Joe Hayden for the Browns starts a 4-game suspension this week. Well, that completely opens things up for A.J. Green, who's probably already your #1 receiver, but now you can start him complete confidence. So I'm looking for a big week from him. And the second cornerback situation to watch is in Kansas City. Brandon Flowers missed last week. The Chiefs were exploited thoroughly by the Falcons' pass defense, by the passing offense. And while the Falcons are much better than the Bills, Stevie Johnson has that talent to exploit another hole if Flowers is out again this week. So I'm starting both A.J. Green and Stevie Johnson with complete confidence.
Yeah, and you look at the Bengals and the Bills, they both lost in Week 1. They're really going to need to come out and score some points here in Week 2.
Yeah, and I see a lot of points and a lot of passing yards in those games too.
There you go. All right, that's Brad Pinkerton. I'm Tom Vandervoort with this week's Ram Fantasy Update.